Hello, everyone, and welcome to what is the final episode of the Gatehring Audiobook Series. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe. And today, let us pick up where we last left off. Now, where we last left off, the heroes have gotten new armor, new weapons, and a new mission. So without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 34. The road to Castle Olympus was long and treacherous. The champions and their army had to take several routes, hoping to avoid any detection from Lord Kairos' spies in the area. They finally reached the mountain's base after navigating dangerous rocky paths and winding ravines. As Amanus and his allies looked up, they realized their journey to the castle was only just beginning. The castle stood high above the clouds, and there was only one way up and one way down to the fortress, a narrow walkway wrapping around the mountain chain. To prevent any casualties, the Spartan ordered everyone to form a line, one after the other. They all tied a rope connecting them to their mounts. With a linked form, they began to ascend upwards. Halfway up the mountain was relatively easy. The path was full enough for everyone to walk. Yet as they climbed higher, the road was gradually receding. Soon it got to the point that they could no longer continue on the trail on their mounts. Amanus told everyone to dismount once again. As everyone grabbed their gear, the Spartan looked to his left and saw nothing but sky. They were around 10,000 feet in the air. The Spartan dared not look down, as he feared the sheer height would paralyze him. Not only that, but the atmosphere was getting thin, and Amanus realized that many were not used to such conditions. He called Richard over to discuss the next plan. The road ahead is getting too narrow, and I fear if we walk on foot anymore, the pathway will go. We need a quicker way up, said the Spartan. I may have an idea, said Richard. He pointed to the side of the mountain. Climb it. Are you serious? Said Amanus. It's the fastest way up. I know of a hidden cave leading to the courtyard, one that Kairos didn't know of. Amanus thought it over. It was dangerous, sure. They risked falling to their deaths or continue walking the narrow path, which would also lead to death. Seeing the rock climb as the lesser of two evils, the Spartan gave out an order. Listen up. We are changing plans. We'll climb the rest of the way up. Tie your gear to your backs and make sure you get a firm grip. If one of us falls, we all fall. Following the order, the champions and the army got all their material and made backpacks, tying them around their waists and shoulders. The Spartan told everyone to grab onto the side of the cliff, and as everyone grabbed onto for dear life, he told everyone to climb as one. Slowly they ascended, step by step, inch by inch, always making sure never to look down, never to stop. The freezing winds added another level of difficulty for the heroes, the cold sting hitting their backs. But despite it all, they climbed. How much farther? Shouted Decimus. Not too far. Don't worry. We'll make it. Margaret was having difficulty keeping up. She was at the far end of the line. She was not used to the cold winds, and her bones were becoming stiff. As she reached for a rock above her, she accidentally glanced downward. The sudden realization caused her to lose grip and knock into a Wendigo soldier. Suddenly, she lost her footing, and now she and the soldier were dangling in the air. This caused a chain reaction for everyone else, as he began to feel the rope tighten around them. Amanus grunted in pain. What happened? He asked. He saw two bodies dangling as he looked down the line of people. He yelled to Avalon. Avalon, see if you and Vortigern can help those two. Slowly moving across the mountainside, the Wendigo reached the far end of the line. Extending his hand, he grabbed Margaret's rope and tried to pull her up. However, he noticed that her line had gotten entangled with the Wendigo soldier's chain. This added additional weight and caused a strain on Avalon's arms. The more he tried to pull, the more pain he felt in his arm. This was not looking good. Just then, he heard a voice coming from the soldier. "My lord, let me go," said the soldier. "No, I can save you both. Just hold on," replied Avalon. "My lord, there's no time. Please let me go," repeated the soldier. Avalon did not want to sacrifice a life unnecessarily, but what other choice was there? Then he felt Vorker's hand on his shoulder. "Sometimes the most difficult choices require the strongest of wills," said the man. Avalon looked down. He knew Vorker was right, but he could not bring himself to do it. Soon an idea popped in his head. Loosening his grip a little, he swung the rope back and forth. He planned to create enough momentum to swing his friends back onto the mountainside. As it began to pick up speed, he looked down and told the others to hurl themselves onto the wall. On the count of 3, I will swing you to the side of the wall. When that happens, get a firm grip and don't let go. Margaret and the soldier both nod. They both held onto the rope tightly. "Get ready. 1, 2, 3. On 3, Avalon swung both of them with all his strength. The momentum he'd made helped propel Margaret and the soldier back onto the mountainside. In a split second, they both latched on and got a hold of the rocky edge. Margaret felt her heart beating furiously, but she was alive. Seeing Margaret and the Wendigo soldier back on the mountain, Avalon told Amanus all was good. With everything back to normal, the climbing resumed. After an hour, they reached the cave entrance. Amanus got up first, followed by Richard, Decimus, and everyone else. To their surprise, it was large, the cave, and accommodated them all. As everyone unpacked, the champions, Avalon and Vorkir, went over the plan once more. "Alright, this is it, the big moment. Do we have everything we need?" said Amanus. Avalon handed Richard the moonstone. Before he had left, Amanus told Vorkir to mold the secret stones into one stone. The copy looked precisely like the original. However, the copy was made of a mineral from this world, and the other came from the stars, to prevent any confusion. Richard scratched a small X on the copy. They just hoped Kairos would easily be fooled and not notice the difference. Placing the stone in his pocket, Richard unpacked his bag and handed the other champions black monk robes. These belonged to Lord Ares' men, and that was exactly who they needed to be. As they got dressed, Richard breathed heavily and began to sweat. Saying he was nervous was an understatement. He was terrified. He was often able to lie and cheat European lords, and normally escape inevitable deaths in the past, but Kairos was no European lord. He could spot a liar very easily. Soon doubts began to flood his mind. What if things go wrong? What if he knows of the plan? What do we do? "We improvise," said Amanus. Before he had any chance to respond, he felt Mori's hand on his shoulder. "You've gotten us this far, and you've gotten us out of worse situations in the past. I have faith you can get us out of this." "Thanks," said Richard. "And if things do go wrong, Tyr will blow her horn and call in the cavalry," said the Roman. After the pep talk, they were ready to enact their plan. Avalon stayed behind with Margaret and the others. "Be safe," she said to the champions. With a deep breath, Richard, accompanied by Morty, Kanatagona, and their escorts, began their walk into the cave. They followed Richard to the secret passage, leading them to a natural stairway. Walking up the spiral steps, they found an iron gate with a lock in their way. Pulling out one of his knives, Richard picked the lock and managed to open it. Removing the rusted item, he pushed open the door. Creak. The noise echoed throughout the cave. Richard grimaced and hoped no one from above had heard them. Pushing the door out of their way, they continued their walk. After a while, they saw what appeared to be light towards the end of the cave. Richard explained that they were about to enter the courtyard. "Here goes nothing," said the Englishman. The champions exited the cave with a few more steps, and were right in the fortress courtyard, where a host of enemy soldiers greeted them. They were all armed to the teeth and pointed their spears. Amanus wanted to draw his weapon, but Richard told him to stick to the plan. Letting go of his sword, Richard tried to play off his cavalier attitude. "What the hell kind of welcoming is this?" he said. "Is this any way to treat a friend of the crown?" Just then a massive individual emerged from the horde. He towered over the mercenary and stared at him with a cold stare. It was Zeus. "You're no friend, Richard," let alone welcome here," said the mighty warlord. Richard looked up and gave Zeus an uncaring expression. "Well, this friend would like to speak to Kairos." He began to walk past the winged individual when the shaft of a spear blocked his way. "What's ruffling your feathers?" sneered Richard. "You're overstepping your limits, human. You do not order anyone here. Not unless I have something he wants." Richard reached into his pocket and pulled out the stone. Zeus' eyes widened. "Hand it over," he barked. Richard wagged his finger in front of him. First, take me to Kairos. I'll have a word with him." Growling, the warlord ordered his men to stand down, escorted the human to the throne room, and informed Lord Kairos. So far the plan was going accordingly. Now they were in. Walking ahead of the large company of soldiers, Richard and the others saw two mighty marble doors in front of them. They knew behind those doors was the man they were summoned to defeat. Knowing he could not show any fear, Richard pushed the mighty doors inward and walked into the throne room. "Oh, Kairos, I'm home." Chapter 35. The throne room was as elegant as it was deadly. Imposing banners with a crescent moon symbol draped the sides of the room. Praetorian guards from each of the warlords stood at attention. The marble pillars, limestone walls, and floors were modeled after a similar one back on Earth. As Richard and the others continued walking through the room, they were stopped by two sentries. At the very far end of the room was the imperial throne. Behind it was an inverted crescent moon dyed a milky white color. Just from the appearance, everyone felt the power radiating from it. Then they heard the sound of the door closing behind them with a loud thud. With the door locked, they heard footsteps approaching them. Then, appearing from behind the throne, emerged the last five warlords: Hera, Hephaestus, Poseidon, Hermes, and Zeus, who were just seen outside. "How the hell did he get inside?" whispered Sybil. Before she got her answer, she saw him. They all saw him. The realm's sovereign, the head man himself, Lord Kairos. He was dressed in an imperial toga attire, complete with his embroidered hood. His helmet still covered his face, but glimpses showed his age. His yellow eyes were like eagles, piercing to the very soul of whoever stood in his way. In his left hand, he held the crescent moon scepter. After all these years, it still had a sparkle to it. As the mighty ruler sat on his throne, he leaned back in his chair. He then gestured to Richard to step forward. It was now or never. Richard then took a bow and stood erect, hoping to mask his fear with charisma. "Mr. Hawk, this is a surprise," said Kairos calmly. "Pardon the intrusion, but I had to see you. It's urgent." Richard gazed at the warlords. "You seem to be missing two of your men." "Something wrong, Kairos?" "I sent out Athena to hunt down the other humans. She's not returned. As for Ares, you were instructed to meet him in the arena. You are here, but he is not. Care to explain?" Richard gulped before answering. "I did meet with Ares as per your instruction. I arrived by myself. My companions were elsewhere. We discussed the terms laid out by our agreement when complications occurred." "Complications?" asked Hera. "We came under attack, my lord. By complete surprise, I might add. Lord Ares didn't make it." "By whom?" asked Kairos. "Dragons, my lord." Kairos and the warlords began to laugh. "Stupid human. Do you expect us to believe that dragons ambushed you in the arena and killed Kairos?" "Killed their Lord Ares?" said Poseidon. "I figured you'd say that, so I brought proof with me." Richard slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a dragon's talon. One of the Praetorians grabbed the claw and gave it to Kairos. The aging ruler stood there in shock. "This is impossible." "Not anymore." "How do we know this is from a dragon?" questioned Hermes. Richard glared at the young warlord. "Don't try my intelligence, boy. I've known your lord and master has called upon them to do his bidding in the past. I've seen them twice. Once 5 years ago, and now just recently. I've also known he has an unsteady pact with the father of dragons, since he's been frequently searching for the stone." After Richard's statement, one of the warlords whispered into Kairos' ear. "I thank you for bringing this news to my attention. A pity to have Ares gone, but I take it your mission was not a total failure." Richard shook his head. After the ambush, I escaped with the stone, thanks to a few of Ares' black monks. They escorted me back into the forest. In my journey here, he said you have the stone. May I see it? Richard felt his palms sweat. Reaching into his pouch, he prayed this would work and pulled off the stone. Everyone in the room marveled. Even Kairos stood slightly above his throne. Give it to me, he ordered. No, said Richard. The room went quiet. Abruptly, Kairos got up from his throne and walked towards the mercenary. He started directly in front of him. Richard could feel the anger radiating in front of him. What did you just say? Did you just say no? Asked Kairos. Yeah, I did. Kairos grabbed Richard by the neck. You don't make the decisions here. When I want something, I take it. Richard remained calm and looked directly into the tyrant's eyes. Not this time. I've been stuck here for 5 bloody years. I've lost many good friends and killed many who deserved it, and many who did not. I am done being someone's lapdog. This time, I speak, and you shall listen. Kairos tightened his grip around Richard's neck. I can break you in two. Go ahead, kill me with your magic, even if you get the stone. Reaching full strength will take eons, and during that time the dragons will return, and you won't be able to drive them away. Kairos growled, but knew the mercenary was right. Letting go, Richard rubbed his throat and took a deep breath in. What I want is very simple. I want your sorcerer as payment. I want him to send me home. Not happening, yelled Kairos. You give me what I want, or else what? Richard held out the stone, and his hand began to squeeze. I'll destroy the stone right here, once and for all. Kairos shot him a glare. Do that and you'll be doomed to this hellhole for eternity. You'll never leave. Richard began to laugh. For all the things I've done, I know I'll burn in hell. That's why I'm not scared to burn here. Everyone could feel the tension. It was now a battle of wills. Who would cave in first? Richard continued to squeeze the stone as the two men stared at one another. He could see the eyes darting from inside Kairos' helmet. Just then there was a slight cracking sound. Kairos raised his scepter into defeat. Stop. Very well. You'll have the mage. He then called for one of his warlords. Hera, go to the dungeons and bring him here. The warlord saluted her lord and made haste. As she left the room, Kairos turned his attention back to Richard. He was impressed, to say the least. Well played, human. Had anyone else risked that gamble, they would have lost. They do not have the strength and character to do what needs to be done. But your kind kills each other for victory on a small piece of rock. An admirable quality. What can I say? We're a complex bunch. Still waiting for Hera to arrive, Kairos inquired about how Richard and his companions escaped the others. This time Mori spoke up. They split into 3 groups, went into opposite directions. That way if either one of us got caught, the others 2 would be safe. Said the samurai. Kairos then noticed that Mori and the others were wearing different armor, not to mention carrying different weapons. Weapons needed by Romeo. We borrowed them from the village. The others made them for us a long time ago. We never used them until now. Why now? When meeting you, one can't be too careful, said Kanata. Minutes later, Hera returned with the mage, still beaten and badly bruised. You have the mage. Now the stone, please. Hold up. Richard knelt and inspected the mage. He saw all the bruises and cuts inflicted on the man's body. Leaning into the mage's ear, Richard whispered something softly to him. The mage then lifted his head and slowly got up. His pain rippled throughout his body as he got to his feet. His legs could not hold his beaten body and began to shake. Richard told Morty and Kanata to help the mage. As the both humans propped the mage on their shoulders, Richard glared at Kairos. We'll lead the mage outside to the courtyard with the stone. Once he has created the portal, we will leave and give your man the stone. That is final. You asked for too much, Richard. I want my stone now, said Kairos. You will have them shortly. You've been searching for them for years. You're telling me you can't wait a few more minutes? My warlords go with you. End of discussion. Richard did not want to derail the plan if he kept pressuring Kairos. He agreed to his terms. Taking the mage, Richard and company bowed and left Kairos. "What do we do?" whispered Decimus. "Wait until my signal," replied Richard. As they made their way to the courtyard, Amanus told Tira to have her horn ready. Tira clutched it underneath the rope. Reaching their destination, Richard and the others stopped. They then turned around and faced the warlords. Zeus and the remaining pantheon told them to make it quick. Richard looked at the mage, who nodded. Taking a deep breath, the mage began to recite a mantra. Suddenly, a glowing yellow light started to appear in front of them. It grew larger and brighter. At first, the warlords did not seem to care, but Zeus noticed something odd about this mantra. His eyes widened upon the realization and screamed out to everyone, "It's a sonic blast! Now!" yelled Richard. The mage finished his chant, and suddenly the yellow energy exploded, sending soldiers and warlords flying in all directions. Richard and companions removed their robes and sheathed their weapons. Tira then reached for a horn and let out a mighty blow. Then, on command, Avalon, Vortigern, and the rest of the army appeared from the secret entrance and began to fill the courtyard. "Charge!" they both yelled. The battle for Castle Olympus had begun. Chapter 36. "Just like old times, huh?" said Richard. "Define old," said Maury. The fighting in the courtyard was brutal and violent. Soldiers from both sides of the battlefield suffered heavy losses. For every 10 Wendigos died, another 10 enemy soldiers followed them. As for the champions, they were putting up one hell of a fight. The Ultra Shields formed a small triangular barrier around Margaret to protect her. Amanus, Decimus, and Tira made sure no soldier got near. The young Spartan would lie if he said he wasn't secretly enjoying this. This was far better than Plateo. While he hacked, slashed, and stabbed away, he was unaware of an archer aiming his arrow at him just above the ramparts. He was too caught up in the moment. The soldier fired an arrow, and with a zip the arrow flew through the air. It would have killed the young soldier if he was not covered in a suit of armor. The arrow tapped his head, causing him to lose his footing. The arrow echoed. The ringing echo ruptured his ears and disoriented him. Causing Amanus to turn around, the Spartan grunted in annoyance. He grabbed a spear on the ground and threw it at the archer. The projectile landed dead center of the enemy's heart as he fell. Though Amanus killed the soldier in front of him, he forgot to protect his rear. He felt someone grab his shield and throw him across the room. He quickly defended himself as the enemy soldier lunged on top of him, trying to stab him with a dagger. The two men struggled, trying to take the advantage. Amanus then found himself pinned inside the enemy soldier just to kill him. Just then, there was a feral growl. "Get off of him," snarled Symbol as she tackled the soldier. She then chomped down his neck and ripped out his jugular. The Celt spat out the piece of flesh and wiped her blood-stained mouth. "Thanks for the save. Someone's got to watch her back." The two then headed back into the fight. They were not the only ones. The Roman soldier told Margaret to find a hiding place. Before she could do so, the trio saw Wendigos and Kairos soldiers flying in the air. Hephaestus, wielding his oversized warhammer, made his way to the humans. By far he was the largest of the warlords, measuring over 20 feet. This burly, disfigured warlord slowly lumbered towards them, made eye contact with Margaret. The warlord soon picked up his stride and swung his hammer. Getting in the way, Decimus raised his shield above his head. Then with an earth-shattering strike, Hephaestus slammed his hammer down. The shock from the blow ran through the Roman's body and forced Decimus to fall to a knee. The force rattled his bones, though despite him shaking, he managed to block the strike. Taking opportunity, Tyr escorted Margaret back to the entrance. Suddenly Hephaestus threw one of his tools from his belt at the ladies. The metal object knocked the two ladies down. "Tira!" shouted Decimus. The Roman tried to get up, only to get kicked in the stomach, sending him back to the wall. His armor managed to take the impact, but he was still hurt. With him down, the giant continued his approach toward the two females. Tyr was the first to get up as Hephaestus reared his massive paw at them. The shield maiden slashed at the hand with her polearm. That it did nothing but leave little cuts on the giant's hands. While Tyr fended off the angry giant. Decimus had somewhat recovered. Still reeling from the kick, he noticed something around the giant's neck. It appeared to be in a lock of some kind. This got an idea flowing in his head. Grabbing his shield, he put away his sword and charged directly at the giant's feet. Putting all his weight forward, he slammed himself into one of the giant's legs. This forced the giant to jolt slightly, giving Tira time to escape with Margaret. Decimus put his shield behind him and began to climb the lumbering tower. Narrowly missing the warlord's hands, the Roman reached the last link of the chain. Propping his feet up against the section of the giant's back, he began to fall. Ephesus soon began to feel a tightness around his neck. Pulling hard on the chain, Decimus saw the giant's hands approaching him. He dodged them as best he could, but he knew it was only a matter of time till he was caught. As for Tira, thanks to Decimus' distraction, the Viking was able to get Margaret back into the cave. Once she was saved, Tira returned to the battlefield, and upon it saw Decimus. "Decimus, what the hell are you doing?" she shouted. "Why does it look like I'm trying to kill this bastard?" he shouted. Because of Decimus, Ephesus was stumbling backwards, becoming a hazard for both armies. "This fool is going to kill everyone here. It's best if you took him down," said Tira. "What the hell do you think I'm trying to do? If you want to help, cut at his heels and cripple the thing." Using her weapon, Tira hacked away at the giant's heels. However, the heels of Ephesus were thick and hard as iron. It would take time to cut through the skin and into the soft tissue. This got an idea in her head. Instead of cutting the heels, she stabbed into his tendons. Then, behind the leg again, she tore a piece of leather from her cloth and wrapped her hands around the blade's edge. She pulled the weapon back with all her strength and tore the tendon apart. Her damage soon caused the giant to scream in pain, causing him to go to his knees. She repeated the other leg's process, and soon the giant was down on both knees. But the giant was still a danger, and though both legs were rendered useless, Decimus knew one strike from Ephesus would be the trick. He turned and saw Mori and Canatagona fighting on the ramparts to his right. "Mori, Sparrow, over here," he said. The samurai and the Mohawk looked at the Roman. "Mori, throw one of your bombs in his face," he yelled, reaching to his pouch. The samurai pulled out a grenade and lit the fuse. As he threw it, he realized the bomb would not detonate in time. Sparrow said he would fire at the bomb just before it hit Hephaestus' face. Agreeing, the samurai aimed his shot before throwing it. With a mighty heave, Mori threw the explosive high into the air. Grabbing his rifle, Sparrow chambered another round and kept the bomb in his sights. Just before the bomb neared the giant's face, the Mohawk pulled the trigger and shot. With marksman precision, the bullet ripped through the air and hit outside of the grenade. In a bright flash, iron fragments and light went everywhere. The explosion sent a beam to the giant's eyes, and soon he was blinded. As he roared in pain, Decimus took his chance. With one last heave, he pulled hard on the chain. The iron collar pulled on the giant's neck again, but this time, Ephesus could not react correctly, and suddenly the collar pulled tightly on his neck, causing him to choke. Decimus yelled and cried with all of his might, and as the giant tried to remove his collar, it was too late, as he had lost consciousness. Decimus yelled in excitement, but that soon changed as he realized the giant was falling backwards. Looking behind him, he took a chance and leaped off. His bet paid off as the giant landed on a company of soldiers, enemy soldiers. "Look out!" yelled one man, as both sides disengaged. There was a loud boom, with the mighty Hephaestus dead on the ground. Many Wendigos began to cheer and believe victory was theirs, but the battle was still young. As for the remaining warlords, Zeus was getting angry. They were running low on men, and that's when he told his Valkyries to enact a devastating attack. "Rain fire upon them," he said. "But sir, what of our men?" said the Valkyrie. Zeus didn't care. Just do what he ordered. As they flew higher into the air, they pointed their spears into the sky. Zeus raised his hands above his head back on the ground and with sparks of electricity emanating. Then lightning bolts shot from his hand into the clouds. The lightning passed through the Valkyries as they began to absorb the energy. Fully charged, they transferred their power into their spears and combined them to form one massive ball of energy. The loud energy hummed and glowed, and soon streaks of lightning fired upon everyone in sight, enemy and friend. Amanus called for everyone who had a shield to raise it to defend themselves. As they did so, they realized that the bolts were just bouncing off of them, one of the many qualities of Nironium. Unlike other metals, lightning had no effect on it, which was good, because had they had their original gear, they would have died from an electric shock. After several lightning barrages, the battleground was covered in smoke and dust. And as the dust settled, Amanus and his allies emerged unscathed. Lowering their shields, they realized they were soon outnumbered and surrounded. Hera's Amazons, Poseidon's Atlanteans, Hermes' assassins, and Zeus' Valkyries encompassed the entire courtyard. Soon, Zeus stepped forward and ordered the champions to lay down their weapons. Amanus turned to his friends, who all gave their reply. "Shall we?" he asked them. "By your lead." "Come and get them," they shouted. The battle resumed once more. Chapter 37. If the battle between the champions and the soldiers was just a warm-up, the fight between the honor guard was the main event. And unlike regular foot soldiers, these Praetorians were the elite. They were better equipped and better trained. And those who survived had the privilege of being honor guards. Amanus and his comrades were now finding it difficult to deal with them, as they were much faster and more durable, and were killing their army quicker and more efficiently. Once the heroes reestablished their foothold, Decimus approached Amanus. "They're like locusts, there's far too many of them, we need to fall back," said the Roman. Decimus began to feel his age catch up to him, and his sword hand was shaking. "We cannot fall back now, we'll never get another chance," said Amanus. "Spartan, we can't win this, we have 2 men, and these honor guards are killing us quickly." Amanus surveyed the battleground. Decimus was correct. Their army had shrunk, and the enemy had cornered them. Spartan then told his friend the story when he was back home in Sparta. During the Persian invasion, our late King Leonidas fought Lord Xerxes' most dangerous men, the Immortals, at the Hot Gates. They were the elite of the Persian army, and were deemed unkillable. "You know what our old king did?" "I'm sure I do," said Decimus. "But, to humor you, what did they do?" Amanus turned and smiled at the Roman. "They put their names to the test." Decimus shook his head, letting out a huff, as well as a chuckle. "You're one crazy fool, I'll tell you that." "Oh, is this to be our end? Then let's make it such an end," said Decimus. "The feeling is the same, brother," he replied. Raising his sword high, Amanus shouted in Greek, "Mexpito vacto," to the death. Soon everyone shouted the phrase, causing Zeus to smile. Somewhat prideful, even in the face of destruction, they remained defiant. "Brave fools, stupid but brave. Perhaps we'll give them a proper burial when this is over. They've earned that much," said Hera. Then, with one last command, Zeus ordered all of his forces to converge on the humans. It was like locusts, and before the slaughter could commence, a loud screech was up in the air. Everyone knew what that sound was. Wyverns. 5 winged serpents descended from the sky upon the battlefield, but to the humans' shock, they weren't going after them. They were going after the honor guard. Just then, one of them hovered over Amanus. "You?" said the Spartan. It was Garston. "What devilry is this?" said Richard. "We have our own reasons for wanting the tyrant dead. For now, we'll work together." Not wanting to argue, Amos gave the order to attack, and now with their new allies, they now stood a chance. Amos thrust his sword into an Atlantean's heart, while Decimus protected his rear and hacked away at a Valkyrie. Symbol and Kanatokona worked together as they tackled random soldiers and stabbed them viciously with their knives. One Valkyrie was able to swoop down and grab the kill by the arms, and she began to fly away. Kanatokona reached for his quiver of arrows, but realized he had run out. Seeing his spear, he quickly grabbed the weapon and threw it at the winged maiden. The spear penetrated one of the Valkyrie's wings, causing her to lose her grip on Symbol. Avalon then caught the Celt, who quickly thanked him and went back to the fighting. As for Mori, he was fighting both an assassin and Amazon simultaneously. Due to his long years of Bushido training, the samurai found this to be an easy challenge. He managed to cut the assassin's arm off with one sword and stabbed the other in the neck with the other. Amidst the chaos, the wyverns dealt with the last surviving warlords. Zeus attacked the others with his spear, but the massive reptilian avoided the strike. She then scratched at him with her mighty talons, leaving deep wounds in his chest. Enraged, the lightning warlord lunged at her and grabbed her wings. With all his strength, he attempted to rip them off. The eldest wyvern felt some pain, and retaliated by pinning Zeus to the castle's side. Then, with her sharp talons, she dug into his flesh and made a closed fist and pulled out a massive chunk out of his body. Zeus let go of her wings and screamed in pain. She then jammed her head into the gaping wound, ripping out even more large chunks of flesh. Her teeth tore into his body like razor blades. Zeus, unable to stop her, died a painful death. Amon soon noticed that the battle was a stalemate, with the dragons fighting with them. They now had the opportunity to deal with Kairos once and for all. Just then, Avalon emerged, covered in blood. "Please tell me you have a plan," he said. Spartan turned to the castle. "How long do you think you and the others can hold them off?" "Long enough. Why?" "I need you to bring Margaret. Get everyone here, now. We're going after the head of the snake." "All right," said Avalon. Amanus then shouted into the air, "Champions, to the castle!" Decimus, Richard, Mori, and everyone else heard the order and rushed to the Spartans' aid. Avalon gathered Margaret and escorted her safely to the others. As he made their way past the carnage, Amanus told everyone the situation. "I'm not going to explain any further. This is our last chance. When we go through those doors, we'll be fighting for our very lives. This outcome will decide the future of this world and ours." "Then you're going to need all the help you can get," said a voice. The heroes turned around and saw that was the mage. "You're badly hurt," said Richard. "Kairos has magic on his side, and you'll need my help." Returning to the battlefield, Amanus could see Avalon Vorker leading the charge against the enemy. "He's right. We're going to need all the help we can get." The Spartan turned to Margaret. "Are you ready to see your husband again?" Margaret rubbed her wedding finger. She looked up and gave the Spartan a firm nod. "Let's go." Grabbing their weapons, the champions, Mage and Margaret, raced up the walkway to confront Kairos, and as they reached the throne room's main halls, Amanus was about to charge in when the door suddenly opened. Suddenly everyone stopped in their tracks and saw Kairos staring at a nearby window overlooking the battle. There was a slight smile on his face, and then he turned his head to look at the heroes. He then walked over to them, calmly. "Come in, everyone. The final act is about to begin." "Your reign is over, Kairos," said Richard. Kairos showed at the mercenary. He then watched as they began to spread out, eyeing him. "Over, my boy? I think you're mistaken. This is just a setback." His arrogant smile started to irritate Amanus. "I have never met a more arrogant man who cannot fathom their own defeat is pathetic." Kairos glared at the young man. "And I've never met a more naive child who thinks that waving a sword makes him a man. What do you think my death will accomplish? For you, for all of you. We fight to free the people," said Symbol. "The people." Kairos then began to laugh. "Those superstitious idolaters, they're not worth freeing, not after what I've learned about them and their secret." "What are you talking about?" said Decimus. Kairos rested his scepter over his shoulder and removed his shield, showing his Corinthian helmet. What do they tell you about the helmet? I'm very curious to know. He said, They said the helmet was powerful and took over your body and your mind, said Tira. Kairos raised a finger to shield me. First off, I control the helmet, not the other way around. Secondly, this helmet is not just powerful, it brought me clarity. When I put it on, it showed me the harsh truth. What truth was that? Amos asked cautiously. That I can never go back home. And neither can any of you. The room suddenly changed. The tension went cold. Kairos pointed to the mage. Ask him. He'll verify. He knows I'm right. Amos and the heroes turned to the mage, who was silent. He darted his eyes away from the heroes. Everyone snickered. Taking the silent treatment, old friend. I see. Very well. I'll tell them. He cleared his throat before continuing. The thing about this place, it ties to the magical and realities of time. And its binds are off the charts. You can take something from one dimension, from another world, and bring it here. Sending it back? That's the problem. What the hell are you talking about, said Morty? You cannot send something back from the moment it was taken without changing history. In doing so, you create an alternate timeline. An alternate timeline, said Simple. That's right. I understand that concept is foreign to you all. Let me explain. If you use the stone's power to return to the moment you were summoned, they would create an alternate timeline that would splinter from the main. As a result, that person would exist in that reality. The branching timeline. New memories will replace the old, although they are gone. Amanus refused to hear this. You're lying, said the Spartan. Kairos slammed his hand on the ground, and a bluish glow wrapped around the heroes. He then used the scepter's power to show them their memories. Visual learning, as I always say, helps the mind understand more. Who would like to go first? Kairos brought forth Amanus. Spartan, thank you very much for volunteering. Now, class, watch and observe. Using the scepter's power, Kairos showed Amanus what his life would be like if he returned home. Let's see. Ooh, fascinating. Looks like Leonidas bends the knee to Xerxes and joins the Persian king in destroying Athens. Sparta becomes a wealthy province and rules all of Greece. Her soldiers are indoctrinated into the Persian military. And look at this. You become the king's bodyguard and leader of the immortals. You suppress all forms of freedom in Europe. Ironic. Your kind fought against the Persians, yet to return home, you would be an ally to the Persians. Amas didn't want to believe it, yet the images shown to him were as clear as day. Desmond struggled against the magic. Damn you, you heartless bastard, said the Roman. Kairos turned to the older soldier and shook his head. I will not tolerate foul language in my classroom. Punishment is needed. He turned his staff on Desmond and showed him his future. Interesting. You come from the Battle of Cannae, said Kairos. Rome's infant years. Let's see what happens to your little republic. Kairos then began exploring Rome's alternate future. He then let out a bewildered laugh. I'll be damned. Hannibal actually achieves it. He captures and burns Rome to the ground. He enslaves his people and forces them to work back home in Carthage. The images then turn to a small village in southern Italy. Decimus, his eyes wide with horror. Interesting. Now, why would they go here? Oh, I see now. Kairos noticed the Roman's eyes began to tear up. This is your home. Let's check it on the family, shall we? Please, make it stop, Decimus said softly. Too late, said Kairos. Decimus was shown the horrific images of his village being razed to the ground. People he had known killed. But that was not the worst of it. The fate of his family. He tried looking away, but the magic restrained his head, forcing him to watch helplessly as his sons were slain defending their mother, only for her to become the wife of Hannibal. The Roman was shaking uncontrollably. Kairos stood there, smug. It's always such a proud day when sons come of age, don't you agree? Decimus said nothing, but glared at the tyrant with tear-ridden eyes. Anyone else? Said Kairos. He then turned his head to Symbol, who snarled at him, hissing too. "Ooh, you're hostile. You're gonna be fun to crack," said Kairos. "You're talking pretty tough to a restrained person, but that's probably good for you," said Symbol. "Oh, is it now?" said Kairos. "Why don't you cut me loose and I'll show you your own heart?" she replied. Kairos chuckled again. "I always loved those with a bit of fire in them." He then repeated the same process on Symbol, and the young Celt saw her future and revealed that she and Queen Boudica repelled the Romans. Symbol laughed. "Seems your magic is waning. How is this future bad?" "Story's not over, sweetie. Watch." As Symbol continued watching her future, he saw peace for a brief moment, but then the Romans returned with a vengeance and began slaughtering every Briton on the isle. Hoping to save her people from extinction, Boudica asked for a parley with the Romans. Knowing the emperor needed another wife, the queen offered Symbol as a tribute to the Romans. The memories then flashed forward to her new life as the empress's mistress, and she lived out the rest of her days as the last of her kind, as all of Britannia was wiped out and made Roman. The memories finished, and Symbol was speechless. "You see, my dear, everyone has a price, even your beloved queen. 3 down, and 1 more to go." He turned to Tira. "And then there was 1. Or lie I say if I wasn't curious about your future." "Do your worst," she growled. "My pleasure, dear." And as he repeated the magic, he was surprised to see nothing. No new memories, no altercations in history, nothing. Nothing at all. My, this is quite sad. You've made no impact in history, not even a minor change. You don't even matter to history at all. Hell, to anyone, you are nothing. Finished teared up. Kairos easily saw that Tira was devastated by the news. He then snapped his fingers and released them from their magic. And as he walked back to the throne, he turned to them. "Now do you see? It's pointless. You can never reclaim your lives back home. You're stuck here forever like me. It's your destiny." "Screw destiny," said Amines. "Nothing is set in stone. We make choices, not you, not the stone, not anyone. Our lives are our own." Kairos placed a hand over his mouth, trying to suppress his laugh. "Incredible. You still cling to hope, even after everything I've showed you." "Yeah, that's us. We're all kinds of stubborn," said Richard. "I admire that. Reminds me of myself. When I first realized my purpose, I thought I could rule over these people and achieve my goals. Initially, I saw this as my destiny. But then you just said screw destiny, which caused me to reflect on my work. So here's my plan. I'm going to kill you all, your allies included, slowly in the most painful ways. Then I'm going to deal with the Chronite and finally rid myself of those irritating pests. Then with the moonstones you have acquired, I will tear their world apart, return in time and shape it in its infancy, and return to a world that has traded freedom for security and order. My utopia. Born out of blood. The Decimus, they'll never know the truth, because none of you will be alive to tell them." Amines and his allies unsheathed their weapons as Kairos channeled his power. Neither side could predict the outcome, but they knew one thing for sure. Today was the end, one way or another. Chapter 39. The champions have faced many enemies up to this point, but Kairos was worse. Something far worse. As a sorcerer, he surprised the humans with his experienced combat skills. This was going to be a tough fight. They fought tooth and nail, and while the mage did provide some magical support, it did little to stop Kairos, and the mage was still recovering in his weakened state. Kairos took full advantage of it. He used his magic to knock the heroes away and ran at top speed, hoping to kill the mage in one blow. The mage reacted as best he could and formed a barrier to protect himself. Before the wall could be sealed, Kairos slammed his spear downward, crushing the shield and breaking one of the mage's shoulder. Then, using the hook end, he dug deep into the mage's arm, pulling him and throwing him across the floor. The mage screamed, clutching his wound. Symbol jumped Kairos from behind and tried to stab him. He blocked her attacks with his staff and threw her off him. Tira slashed his left arm, Before he could react, leaving a deep gash, he grunted in annoyance, but thought nothing of it. He then pushed the Viking away with an energy blast. Everyone tried to do something new on him. Richard and Maury even tried to fight, but they were unable to move their bodies. They were frozen in place. As Kairos was about to finish them, Amanus rushed in and defended his friends, blocking the attack with his shield. The Spartan unsheathed his blade and unleashed an onslaught of attacks. Never letting Kairos use his magic, the young soldier took the mad sorcerer by surprise. And as he was preoccupied with the constant barrage, he did not see something behind him. Suddenly he felt a sharp end enter his back and felt his sword go right through him, courtesy of Decimus. This angered him, and his response was an elbow strike to the man's face, and then punching Amanus in the stomach. The duo were pushed back as Kairos pulled his sword out of him. He then threw it at the Spartan, who blocked it with his shield. Just then, Amanus and the others saw that Kairos was healing himself. They needed a new plan. "This isn't working. What do we do?" "I have an idea," said Richard. "What is it?" "Something I learned from the Hawks. Hit high, hit low, all around." "In English, please," said Simple. "Keep 'em off balance on all sides." "That's risky, Richard, even for you," said Maury. "Do we have a choice?" he said, helping everyone to their feet. They attacked him. Kairos is not worried. Amanus struck first with a downward chop with the sword. Kairos quickly blocked it. However, he then exposed himself and allowed Decimus to cut him on his thigh. Blood stained his white robes. Kairos charged an energy blast, but had to cancel it as Symbol quickly went after his wounded leg. They repeated this over and over. And then suddenly there was an opening. This was the chance Maury needed, as the samurai slipped under Kairos' nose and with his dual katanas delivered powerful slices and slashes across his chest and stomach. The front of his robes were now stained red and torn to shreds. The heroes repeated this again, and soon the tyrant was covered in cuts and slashes. They began to tie in the circle and then stab him repeatedly. The tyrant was defenseless, and blood began to spurt everywhere as Kairos began to have red all over him. He felt the blades piercing his body and cut away. For a brief moment the heroes thought they were winning. They may actually beat him. They couldn't be more wrong. Kairos was angry, and as he clenched his fist and started to glow, a bright light blinded the heroes and stopped their assault. And before they could react, he let out a loud yell, and a massive energy pulse sent the heroes back flying in all directions. They all landed hard on the ground, some experiencing broken bones. As the light faded away, Kairos was left standing. His robes were tattered and stained red. The Man King's eyes were wide and attentive. He looked around the room and saw the champions groaning in pain. He was about to turn when he saw a voice, or rather heard a voice. "Where are you going? Don't tell me you're just leaving now. What's the matter? Don't tell me you're hurt. We're not done yet." He noticed Amanus was on his feet. Young Spartan clearly was in pain. The blast had caused some serious internal injury. Yet despite it all, Amanus refused to step down. Kairos glared back at the Spartan through his helmet. Using his magic, he pulled the human towards him. Grabbing him by the throat, he squeezed at the Spartan's neck. Amanus could feel his throat being crushed. Suddenly he felt something cold and sharp penetrate his body. As Kairos stabbed the Spartan with the crest and stabbed him in the chest with his own blade. The young soldier's eyes widened as he felt the cold steel penetrate his body. He tried to gasp for air, but found he could not breathe. Just then Kairos was about to kill him, when a sharp aneurysm shocked his head, causing him to lose his grip on the young man's neck. As Amanus fell to the ground, gasping for air, he struggled to save himself. Fearing Kairos would retaliate soon, he quickly pulled out his sword from his gut and hit the Mad King square in the head with the back of his shield. The shield blast knocked Kairos off his feet. Now both men were lying on the floor in a pool of their own blood. Amanus had lost a lot and did his best to bandage the wound. As for Kairos, he slowly began to recover. As he got up, he felt a ringing pain courtesy of the shield patch. He then felt blood dripping to the side of his head and rain down his cheek. His tongue tasted it and said nothing for a moment. All that for a drop of blood, said the Mad King. Suddenly a loud female voice shouted in the room. Enough! Please stop this, Archibald, said Margaret. She stood behind a pillar throughout the entire fight and watched the whole ordeal. She was silent and said nothing. Seeing her husband hurting others and himself getting hurt was too much for her. Kairos looked at her with a puzzled look. What did you call me? He said. It's me. I'm your wife, she replied, tears running down her cheek. Kairos slowly walked over her and placed a hand on her cheek. Then his heart expression changed, and his voice became soft, almost familiar. Margaret, said Archibald. His voice was soft and weak. Yes, my love, she said with a smile. How is this possible? We brought her here, groaned Amanus. Archibald looked at the wounded Spartan. No, that's impossible. It's true. Amanus summoned her from your time to save you, said Richard. Archibald looked at his wife for the first time and tried to smile, but soon his expression quickly changed. You shouldn't be here. He's too strong. You all need to... Ah! Archibald placed his hands on his helmet and screamed in pain. Margaret began to worry. What's happening to him? She wailed. The helmet. Kairos is trying to retake control. Waiting to remove it, she said. You can't. Any mere weapon cannot destroy the helmet. It needs to be destroyed by another weapon of the same caliber. Looking around, the mage saw Kairos' weapon. The staff! Use the staff! Margaret rushed over to the staff and tried to pick it up. She pulled away as her hands began to burn from the mere touch. Damn it, said the mage. Kairos wants to place a spell on it and shrank. Only he could use it. We don't have time for this, said Amanus, limping towards the staff. Desmond called out for his friend. What are you doing? That could kill you. I know, but I'm going to finish this fight, he said. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed the staff, and as he gripped it, he felt the burning sensation on his hands. He could feel the skin peeling from the palms, and he was shocked at how heavy this weapon was. He knew if he didn't do this now, he would never get another chance. And as he approached Archibald, he struggled to raise the staff over his head, for he did not have the strength to do it. Thus he positioned himself and held the staff in a downward position. He had to ensure he hit the helmet on the crown with the back end of the crescent. Feeling his body losing strength, he twisted his hips and swung with whatever power he had left, and the end of the crescent hit the helmet dead on with a thunderous crack. Its recoil ricocheted Amanus and threw him against the wall. The Spartan yelled in agony. Looking up, he saw the helmet was cracked but not destroyed. Trying to get up, his feet failed him and forced him to the ground. Time was running out. Suddenly Margaret remembered something. She reached into her leather bag and pulled out a ruby stone. Richard stared at her. You brought that here? I thought it might help, she replied. Before they left the village, Margaret sneaked the real stone in her bag. It was a risky gamble, but one that had paid off. The mage grabbed the stone from the woman's hands. Then an idea popped in her head. Amanus, combine the stone with the scepter. Its combined magical properties may be enough to destroy the helmet once and for all. The mage tossed the stone to the Spartan, and as he grabbed it, he combined it. The magical properties worked in harmony. As he breathed with what he thought was his last breath, he said a slight prayer. Almighty Heracles, give me strength once more. He whispered, using the staff to prop him up. Amanus walked over to Archibald and the cracked helmet, and with the last ounce of his strength, he swung and destroyed the helmet with an earth-shattering boom. Amanus went flying back, and this time hitting a pillar and cracking a stone wall. Amanus, shouted Symbol. The uncle ran over to him. Everyone else soon rushed over, except for Margaret, who went for her husband. Symbol kneeled and cradled the Spartan's head. His face was covered in blood and more. Is he dead? asked Symbol. Not if I can help it, said the mage. He created a glowing orange sphere of light, using fast hand gestures. He then guided the orb to the body and gently pushed it in. Suddenly the Spartan awoke with a loud gasp, followed by a cough. You're alive, she said. She hugged the Spartan tightly, which Amos patted her on the shoulder to release him from the bear-like hug. Breaking away from the embrace, Amos looked at his friends. But then the mood changed, and looked over to Margaret as she held her husband. "Thank you, my love. You freed me." His eyes were no longer bright and full of life. They were now dull orbs, devoid of joy. His face was wrinkled, and his hair was gray. And instead of a young man she had married, an old man lay before her. "We're going to get you out of here," she told him. "I'm sorry, but I fear not. I wish we had another chance." He slowly closed his eyes, and his hands fell softly to the ground. "Archibald, Archibald, Archibald." She began to scream and openly wept over her husband's body. Amos placed a hand on her shoulder. The mage soon approached them with an equally sad look on his face. Margaret turned to the mage. "Can't you save him?" Unfortunately, the mage could not. Archibald had been a host for the spirit of Kairos for far too long. The helm was the only thing keeping him alive. As they took the old man's body, they were prepared to leave, when suddenly a voice emerged. "Who said you could leave?" The heroes stopped in their cold tracks, and as they turned around, their eyes opened in horror. "You've got to be kidding me." They looked and saw the helmet piece itself together, and suddenly the parts began to glow and glow brighter. Soon the same blue light as they had seen before shone before them, and as it glowed, the helmets lifted upwards, lifted higher and higher and higher into the air, until suddenly a form of ethereal white light stood before them. As it spoke, a familiar voice came. Kairos was freed. "Return to me what is mine," said the specter, blasting the heroes with energy bolts. They took cover behind the pillars. "How many times do we have to kill this man? It seems Kairos no longer needs a host body to survive. Impressive now. How do we kill him?" "I don't know," said the mage. "Honestly, no one ever thought Kairos could do this. Sure, there must be a way. The staff," said Amanus. "The staff is dead. It has no power," said the Roman. "Then let's take it back," said Amanus. "What are you getting at?" said Richard. Amanus quickly explained that Kairos was now made of pure energy, and they could probably seal him away in the stone. They could use his power against him, in essence, using the stone as a vacuum. It was a gamble, but they have done the impossible before. With a deep breath, he left his cover and faced Spartan again. Kairos hovered above him. "Give me the stone." "It's not yours to have," said the Spartan. "It's mine. Everything here is mine. All achievements, all conquests, everything belongs to me." "Wrong. You used Archibald to achieve those things. You used him for your own nefarious ways. I gave him everything he wanted. I offered him his utopia, his perfect world, and it still was enough." Alice could feel the energy radiating off the scepter. "You may have given him what he wanted, but you never gave him what he needed. Then I will give you all a much-needed grave." Kairos charged up an enormous amount of energy and released the Spartan with full force. Amos thrust his staff at the incoming energy blast, and as soon as the energy touched the scepter, the moonstone activated began to absorb. Now it was a battle to see who would outlast the other. Everyone from around the corner was shocked to see Amanus doing this, and Amanus himself could not believe this was happening. But soon he could feel his body begin to burn, as little blue ripples of bluish energy began entering the Spartan's body. It was like getting hit by 1,000, if not millions, of lightning bolts. Kairos noticed this and began to push even more energy at the Spartan. He knew he could not survive this. "Did you really think you and your champions could win this against me? I am Kairos, destroyer of empires. You're nothing but a flea, an ant to be crushed under my heel. Above all, you're alone." "He's not alone," said Decimus. Amos looked up and saw the Roman place his hand on his shoulder. The Roman smiled, telling the Spartan he would take the burden too. Suddenly, Tira emerged, then Symbol, Mori, Richard, Knatagona. Everyone was there, willing to share the responsibility. But then something beautiful happened. Because of their tight bond of belief in one another, the inner will strengthened the staff and increased the stone's power. Soon Kairos could no longer stop giving energy. He was trapped. "This is impossible. You're mortals. How?" "It is as you said," replied Amynus. "We're the champions of Earth." They all yelled in unison. Just as they were finished, Kairos was slowly pulled into the stone. He tried to escape, but the rock was too much for him. With a final and lengthy no, Kairos was fully sealed and locked away in the stone prison. Finally, after all these years, it's finally over. Really over, said the mage. Unfortunately, the Kel spoke too soon. Soon the castle began to destroy itself. Pillars began to break. Floors began to erupt. They had to leave. Suddenly, Vorkir and Avalon arrived. "What the hell just happened?" they said. "Long story, but we need to get out of here," replied Amynus. And as they began to leave, they had to make sure that the scepter was still with them. And as they got out of the castle and avoided the falling rubble, they found their way outside. But unfortunately, the secret entrance was blocked. There was no way to escape. Just then, the wyverns came once more and offered them a ride. "Get on," said the young wyvern. Getting on his back, the heroes and their allies narrowly escaped the crumbling destruction of Castle Olympus. Amynus took one last look at the castle as he flew higher and higher. Suddenly, his grip on the staff wavered and dropped it. He cursed himself. But Symbol placed a hand on his shoulder. There was nothing you could do. Besides, he's trapped in there. I doubt there's a way for him to escape. "You may be right," said Amynus. Even though they had lost the staff, the tyrant was gone. They were freed, but at a heavy cost. In the village, everyone eagerly awaited their savior's return, or the execution. The elders escorted everyone to the great hall and told them they must have faith. And then one of them gave the announcement they had returned. Everyone erupted into cheers. And as the heroes came down to the village, Amynus properly silenced them with a hand. "We've done it. Kairos is beaten. You're free. But you shouldn't thank just us." He turned to Margaret, who still held her husband. "This day came with a heavy cost. Today we lost a great man, a living husband, and to many a good friend. There will be times for celebrations, but we must honor the fallen." Chapter 41. A month passed since the downfall of Kairos and the hordes of Castle Olympus, and many things changed during that time. The Chronai no longer lived in fear and built a new village, and upon completion, they sent word far and wide to the other clans to join them. And under King Avalon, yes, Avalon became king, the Wendigos were the first to join. Avalon had the makings of a just king. He wanted his people to see more than their small area of the woods. It was a difficult task, but with the help of his royal advisor, Vorkir, Avalon would follow the righteous path. In addition to the Wendigos, the Aedos, Saurians, and Thesmodus re-emerged from the shadows and brought their knowledge of technology and combined it with the magic of the Chronai. Ironically, they became what Kairos had struggled to achieve, a utopia. However, not everything was sunshine and rainbows. After Kairos' defeat, Archibald was given a hero's burial and cremation per his wife's wishes. The maid told her that he had found a way to send her back to her home at the current time. She told him that she would have to think about it. She was not the only one grappling with this news. After the revelation presented by Kairos, the heroes were hesitant to go back home and change their future. Many wanted to vote on this, but Amynus said the choice had to be everyone's own, and everyone had to make their own decision. For the first 2 weeks, many thought about what Amynus said. However, another thing came up during those weeks: marriage. To everyone's surprise, Decimus and Tira fell in love. While it was a tough choice initially for the Roman, having the desire to go back home and see his family, he knew his wife would want him to move on and be happy. Thus, he decided to stay, make a new home, a new life here. That was reassuring news to Tira, as the shield maiden had no interest in going back home. She told everyone that she had grown bored with tavern brawls back home. In truth, it was because she finally had the void in her heart filled. Soon, everyone in the village began preparing for the big day. Sybil and Margaret helped Tira make a new dress for the ceremony, while Desmond spent days with his friends helping him go over his vows. It was a very hectic week for everyone. But then, one night under a clear night sky, everyone gathered for this special day. Tira wore a beautiful long white dress with a flower crown atop her head, while Decimus wore his distinguished centurion armor. As they both walked to the altar, Decimus reached into his pocket and pulled out an iron ring with runes carved into it. He slipped it onto her finger. With one of the elders officiating the wedding, Tira and Decimus exchanged vows. Tira went first. Decimus, I pledge to you both in your care. I promise to smile when I see you in every morning. I shall be your shield, and you mine. I shall not slander you, nor you me. I shall honor you above all others, and you shall do so privately when we quarrel. This is my wedding vow to you. Now it was Decimus' turn. I, Decimus, take you, Tira, to be my beloved wife. I promise to be true to you in good times, sickness, and health. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. I pledge, in honesty and sincerity, to be for you an obedient and faithful husband. With the vow said, the elder spoke aloud. By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. As Decimus kissed Tira, everyone in the crowd began cheering and whistling for the new couple, and after the ceremony was a night of celebration. They were singing and dancing, and Amyntas slipped outside to get some air, with everyone having a grand time. Actually, in the party, he looked up and saw the clear moon sky. He smiled. Leaving so soon? Said a voice. Amyntas looked over his shoulder and saw Richard with 2 mead cups. The English knight sat beside him and handed the Spartan a cup. Those 2 make a great couple, said Amyntas. Aye, Decimus found himself a good woman. Hope he lasts long enough. The pair laughed and began discussing the future. Margaret will be leaving tomorrow, said Richard. I heard. I wish her the best going back, said Amyntas. Taking another sip, he saw a worried look on Richard's face. Something on your mind? Richard let out a sigh. Look, mate, I've been talking to Maury and Sparrow, and, well, we decided to go back home, back to our times. Amyntas placed his drink down. You know what will happen if you do, said Spartan. I do, but I don't care. And like you said, mate, we make our own destinies. Everything will change, and the change will be awful, and we make the same mistakes. It won't be perfect, but we'll be our own. Well then, I wish you the best of luck, said Amyntas. The pair toasted each other and went back inside, spending the rest of the night partying in style. And soon the next day all preparations were made. Margaret, with Archibald Durin, along with Richard, Maury, and Gnathagonha, arrived at the portal. And wishing them off was Amyntas and the remaining of the 7. Time to go home, my love, she said. The portal quickly sent Margaret and her husband back to their time, and the maids quickly worked the doorway and told Richard that it was ready for them. Richard, Maury, and Gnathagonha had all their supplies with them, even the Nyronian weapons. Before they left, they gave their goodbyes to the 4 newbies. Try not to get lost in any swamps, said Gnathagonha. Tyr smiled and playfully punched the Mog in the arm. Take care of yourself, she said. Sparrow hugged her and wished her the best in her new life. It is said that we all seek some measure of peace, but few of us ever find it. I think we both found ours, said Maury. He clasped hands with Decimus and wished him the best. Then it was Richard's turn. Of all the bastards I've ever known, you're probably the one I would call a brother. He then turned to Sybil. Good luck to you 2, lass. Amyntas and Sybil hugged the Englishman and wished him the best. Before they entered the portal, the 3 veterans looked at each other and contemplated their new journeys. Do you think we'll ever see each other again? Said Maury. If fate deems it necessary, I have faith we'll see each other again, said Richard. Turning one last time, the 3 veterans gave one final heartfelt goodbye and entered the portal. And just like before, they were sent to their own time. The mage closed the entrance and looked at Amanus and the others who stayed. So what do we do now? The mage asked. Amanus looked at the frontier. A wide new world was ready for them to explore. The possibilities were endless. Now, it's time to look ahead to our next frontier. Epilogue. The Imperial throne room was a bleak and decrepit place. Fire pits surrounded the chambers, and piles of skeletons cluttered near the stairs. This would make anyone sick to their stomach. However, many were comfortable in such places. Almost already walking up the black stone stairway with a deep voice stopped him. "Who approaches?" said a voice. "'Tis I, father," said the young wyvern. "Garston, you have returned from your mission. I trust you were successful." The young wyvern bowed before his king. "Not entirely. I was unsuccessful in my task of killing the king of Nairon. I was wounded and was forced to fulfill a life debt." His father was not pleased by this news. Garston did, however, have some other information that would change the situation. "But I was able to fulfill another task, one that has plagued you for some time." "Oh? What would that be?" "Lord Kairos is dead." Two nostrils emerged from the shadows and breathed over Garston. "Are you positive?" said the king. Garston reached behind his wing and presented his father with the scepter with a red moonstone. Out of the shadows emerged two massive claws as he picked up the small item. Suddenly an evil chuckle came from the darkness. "You please me, my son. I only wish I could have dealt with him myself. Well, seems the fate have offered you another chance. The human sealed Kairos in the very stone. He's all yours." Garston suddenly saw a massive toothy smile hidden in the background. "Excellent work, my son. As a reward for your service, I will allow you a world to rule on our next conquest. Now, please, excuse me. I must speak with an old friend." Garston smiled and bowed before leaving the imperial chambers. Once alone, the mighty dragon king Drazar emerged from the darkness. He held the stone close to his eye, and thanks to his keen dragon vision, he could see the spirit trapped within the prison. He let out another chuckle before talking evilly into the magical stone. "Greetings, Lord Kairos. We have much to discuss." And that is it. We have reached the very end of the audiobook series for The Gathering. And I am so happy to have finally finished it. Now, I know I'm a little late, but I was able to read the last few chapters for all of you. And I'm going to take a much needed hiatus, for at least for this series, because the next book is Michael, Last Angel of Earth, and I cannot wait to read this for all of you. So, until next time, thank you for your love and support, and have a wonderful evening.